The 10 most powerful beings in Star Wars are not the Sith or the Jedi. Some stand so far above Vader and Palpatine that even the strongest Force users barely register beside them. Power here is not skill with a blade, but the ability to bend life, death, and the shape of the stars. An emperor who ruled the entire galaxy was afraid of exactly one person. He did not send a fleet or his own apprentice to face her. Instead, he sealed off the whole planet she lived on and left her trapped there. In the Legends novel, The Courtship of Princess Leia, she leads the Nightsisters of Dathomir from a remote world of women who bent the Force through ritual and spellcraft. Their power went back centuries, to a rogue Jedi named Alia, who was banished to Dathomir around 600 years before the Battle of Yavin. Alia taught the women of the prison colony to wield the Force and left behind a code of laws, the last rule of which was simple: never concede to evil. Most of the clans kept that code, but Gethzerion did not. What she could do with the Force is what reached the ear of the Emperor himself. She was cast out of her clan after she turned on her own clan mother, then gathered the other outcasts around her and built the Nightsisters into something darker, a faction that embraced the very powers the older clans had forbidden. Where the other clans kept to a careful, disciplined spellcraft, Gethzerion wielded a raw and wild magic that outstripped all of them. Word spread that she had grown far stronger than anyone expected, and that worried Palpatine enough to act. So he ordered the planet sealed off, and an interdiction enforced by one of his warlords, Zinj. To keep her contained, the blockade wrapped Dathomir in a net of satellites that could reflect away the sun's warmth and slowly freeze the surface, while Star Destroyers held orbit with standing orders that no ship could land. The dread ran so deep that the Empire destroyed the planet's own landing field from orbit and abandoned hundreds of his own people on the surface. Rather than risk giving her a way off the world, the Nightsisters seized those stranded soldiers and enslaved them. And what the Emperor feared was simple: if Gethzerion ever reached the orbital docks, she could carry her power off Dathomir and spread it across the galaxy, until one day she might challenge even him. When Zinj's General Melvar came down to the surface planning to betray her, Gethzerion struck first. In a single moment, with nothing but a thought, she killed Melvar and the 100 stormtroopers escorting him all at once, dropping every one of them where they stood. She did the same thing to the young Jedi Luke Skywalker when he faced her, reaching into his mind and rupturing the blood vessels in his brain, leaving him barely alive. Her story closed only when she fled in a stolen shuttle and Zinj's Star Destroyers opened fire on her craft, ending her at last. For all her power, Gethzerion was still bound to a single world, leashed by the Empire that feared her. The being who came next could not be contained by any blockade, because it had become part of the planet itself. On a quiet, remote world, an army watched a single creature rise into the sky and turn itself into a storm. In the canon series Star Wars Rebels, he is something neither Jedi nor enemy. He called himself the one in the middle, sitting between the light side, known as the Ashla, and the dark side, called a Bogon. He was vast, a mountain of a being with a look of stone and a long beard, so old he blended into the coral rock of the planet Atollon, and he could rise out of the earth or vanish in a blink despite his size. He slept there until a Jedi named Canon arrived, carrying a broken sense of balance inside himself. When Canon was left blinded, the Bendu did not heal him. Instead, he taught Canon that the spider-like predator stalking him had been feeding on his own fear and anger, and that a man who could truly see himself would never be blind. He spoke like something that had watched the galaxy's wars come and go and wanted no part of any of them. The Bendu also tested Canon and his young student, Ezra Bridger, together. When the two were at odds, he forced them to recover a hidden holocron side by side, mending the rift between master and apprentice. He warned them that joining a Jedi and a Sith holocron was no small thing, that it opened a window of terrible clarity but could loosen chaos with it, and that once a secret is known, it can never be unknown. He had seen the ruin such knowledge could bring before, and it saddened him to watch it happen again. Yet when an army finally came to Atollon, that calm broke. When Grand Admiral Thrawn's forces found the rebel base, Kanan came to ask for help, and the Bendu refused, blaming the Jedi for bringing war to his quiet world. He rose into a churning ball of smoke and lightning and became a storm the size of the sky, crying out that he was the light and the dark and the Bendu, and he brought that storm down on every side at once. The storm tore through enemy walkers and rebel fighters alike, because to the Bendu, there was no side worth sparing. Before he fell, he turned his eyes on the commander hunting him, and spoke a warning the Admiral would carry for years. Thrawn was an officer known for never losing his composure. He ordered his forces to fire into the eye of the storm, and the Bendu was struck and came crashing down. Wounded on the ground, he warned Thrawn that he could see what the Admiral could not. Ahead of him waited defeat, like many arms surrounding him in a cold embrace. Years later, that warning came true in almost the exact shape he described. Thrawn fired at him in that final moment, but the being simply faded out of the air, his laughter rolling across the battlefield. Whether the Bendu died that day or simply became one with the Force again, no record can say, but he only ever stood between two halves of something far older, and the beings who shaped that something had never once set foot on a battlefield. A Jedi returning after death as a glowing blue spirit is one of the most familiar sights in the saga. That power had a source, and it was not the Jedi who first discovered it. Grandmaster Yoda finds them in the canon animated series The Clone Wars, near the end of his fighting days. They are 5 beings who appear as shifting faces of emotion, named for serenity, joy, anger, sadness, and confusion, and they speak of one another as cousins. They live at the wellspring of life, described as the birthplace of midichlorians, the microscopic life that ties every living thing to the Force. There, the energy of the living world and the deeper cosmic force meet as one. They never fight at all. They cannot be struck down or harmed. For beneath their robes, there is no body, only Force energy given a shape Yoda could understand. They are neither alive nor dead, and instead of fighting, they test. The 5 put Yoda through a series of trials meant to face him with his own fears and his own darkness. He had to confront his own pride, resist a vision of saving people he loved, and stand against a phantom of the dark side wearing the shape of his enemies. Only after he passed every trial did they offer their gift. They taught Yoda how to keep his own identity after his body was gone, a thing the Jedi had believed impossible. The path was first uncovered by Qui-Gon Jinn, and it is what later let Obi-Wan Kenobi, Yoda, and Anakin Skywalker return as glowing spirits. The priestesses make plain that this is not a power to be seized or fought for. It is given only to those who have let go of fear and the need to possess. The road that lets a Jedi guide the living from beyond death began here. With 5 beings the rest of the saga has largely forgotten. They could grant life beyond death, and never once raised a hand in anger. The creature waiting in the dark did almost nothing else, and a circle of zealots paid for it with their souls. A secretive order once captured a god and kept it caged inside their own warship. Their undoing came when they threw Chewbacca into the same room. If you want to see more videos like this one, a quick subscribe means you will always be first to know. In the Legends comic, The Empire Strikes Back monthly, Han Solo, Leia, and Chewbacca are pulled into a region of space called the Hell Hoop, a place no one was said to ever leave. There, their ship is swallowed by a larger vessel crewed by a cult known only as the Five. They were 5 worshippers of dark gods, Suzal, Maven, Chell, Chakla, and Kubari, who had spent centuries snaring passing ships and torturing whoever they caught for their own amusement. Held among their collected curiosities was their greatest prize, a creature described as a demon of unimaginable power, the last of a race that had once owned the universe. Their mistake was simple. They could not tell the difference between an animal and an ally. While Suzal worked to break Han and Leia with lifelike illusions, the cult tossed the towering Wookiee into the same chamber as their prisoner. Sure, he was nothing but a beast. The thing they kept there had been tricked into an angle trap years before, a cage so dangerous that freeing what it held could devastate a planet. Wutzek reached into Chewbacca's mind not to control him, but to show him a vision of an age long past and to ask for help. Chewbacca knew the thing was dangerous, but he freed it anyway, gambling that its vengeance would fall on their captors rather than on them. The end came in moments. Wutzek rose as a vast, swirling cloud of blue-white light and turned on the 5, consuming not just their bodies but their souls, marveling at how frail and fleeting their flesh had been, and telling them that all that remained of them would survive inside him forever. Gratitude was a foreign thing to him, he admitted, yet his rescuers had done him a great service, so he let them leave in the Millennium Falcon before he tore the cult's warship apart. He was the final survivor of a race older than nearly anything in the galaxy, and he was left loose somewhere out in the dark, never accounted for again. Wutzek was a relic of an age long gone, but raw power and age mean little without ambition. One being had all 3, and he used them to cheat death itself. There is a world in the old stories where nothing lives at all. No plants, no animals, not even an echo of the Force. It was full of life once, until a single man drained every bit of it away in one ritual. In the Legends novel Revan, the man behind it was born Tenebrae, a child so strong in the dark side that he was killing with the Force while still very young. He rose to become a Sith Lord called Vitiate, and for a century, he ruled his home world in quiet, while the rest of the dark side practitioners burned themselves out in a great war against the Republic. When that war was lost, Vitiate summoned the surviving Dark Lords to Nathema. He told them he was gathering their strength to save their crumbling empire. The truth was something far worse for everyone who answered the call. He never meant to share the power, he meant to take theirs. By the Sith Empire's own records, more than 8,000 of its lords answered the summons, and Vitiate bent every one of their minds to his will. Over 10 days, he turned their combined strength into one enormous act of dark sorcery. The ritual drained the life from every living thing on the planet, down to the insects and the plants, and it stripped the Force from the world itself. When it ended, Nathema was a lifeless husk, the man who had been Vitiate was gone, and in his place stood an immortal Sith Emperor. From these shadows, the immortal tyrant rebuilt his empire in unknown space and spent centuries preparing his revenge on the Republic. The patience and scale that mark him as the ultimate long game among the Sith. To rule without risking his true body, he created the voice of the Emperor, a host he possessed and spoke through while his real form lay hidden, burning through one body after another across the ages, everyone speaking with the same cold voice. When the legendary knight Revan came to kill him, the Emperor instead captured him and sealed him away to feed on his mind for 300 years. And even that broken, imprisoned resistance was enough to delay galactic war for centuries. His true goal was never conquest. He meant to drain all life in the galaxy and ascend as a god, and on a later world he possessed an entire population and consumed them in a single stroke, coming close to that dream before he was stopped. He stands as one of the most dangerous individuals the dark side ever produced, yet he mastered only one half of the Force. Vitiate drank the life from worlds to make himself deathless, yet long before any Sith drew breath, something had already reached past single worlds and reshaped the map of the galaxy itself. Long before the Republic, before the Jedi, before anyone kept records at all, someone moved the stars themselves into place. Scientists later found at least 17 separate star systems that show the same impossible signatures, worlds that should not sit where they do. In the Legends reference book, The Essential Guide to Warfare, the Celestials appear as a precursor race of staggering power, known only as the Architects. They could reshape, rearrange, or wipe out entire star systems on little more than a whim. The galaxy, as later civilizations knew it, the placement of certain worlds and suns, was in part their handiwork. They did not rule it alone. They raised up other ancient species to serve them, the insectoid Killiks among them, while species like the Sharu were said to have buried their own cities and dulled their own minds just to escape the Architects' notice. Their greatest creation was a machine built to move planets, and it still sits in the galaxy today. The Architects had the Killiks build Centerpoint Station, a structure powerful enough to drag whole worlds across space. It was used to gather 5 separate planets into a single system and hold them there. The Architects possess other impossible engines too, including a gravity machine in another system so powerful that when later beings tried to use it, it tore their entire system apart. They did not build any of it for conquest. They built it as a set of tools, and one of those tools was turned to building a prison. Using that planet-moving power, the Architects pulled dozens of black holes together into a deadly cluster known as the Maw, and they sealed something inside it. Then they vanished from history. A servant species called the Rakata rose up against them, and within a few thousand years, the Architects were simply gone. The being trapped in the Maw, however, was patient, and her story comes later. What the Architects left behind never stopped working. Their machines still drift through the galaxy thousands of years on, powerful enough to move planets and crack open star systems, with no master left to command them. The Celestials needed a whole civilization to wield that kind of power. A family needed only each other, because the Force itself ran through their blood. The light side and the dark side were not ideas on Mortis. They were a brother and a sister, held apart by their father on a world where all the energy of the Force pulled into one place. In the Clone Wars, Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Ahsoka Tano follow a distress signal so old it had not been used in 2,000 years. A great stone monolith pulls their ship from space and sets them down on Mortis, a realm where the ground shifts so that no map can hold it. where the day heals and night kills, and where almost no time passes in the world they left behind. There, they meet a family of 3. The father holds the center. His daughter is the living right side, gentle and selfless, while his son is the living dark side, fierce and hungry for power. The father calls them anchorites, beings who withdrew from the wider galaxy because their power was too great to let loose upon it. These 3 did not just wield the Force, they were the Force, wearing the shapes of a family. The children shift into enormous beasts, the daughter taking the shape of a great winged griffin, and the son becoming a monstrous gargoyle, each able to bend life and death and reshape the world with a thought. The son alone dragged Anakin into the well of the dark side and forced a vision of the future on him. Vader's mask, burning worlds, the people he loved dead at his own hand. And for a moment, it turned Anakin against everything he was. Yet even beings like this can be ended. A single blade, the dagger of Mortis, is the only weapon in existence that can take their lives. For ages, it stayed hidden away, and as long as it did, the family endured. The father had summoned the 3 Jedi for a reason, and that reason was Anakin. He believed the young Jedi might be the chosen one. The figure prophesied to bring balance to the Force, and he tested him. Anakin passed, dominating both the light and the dark children at once, forcing 2 living gods to their knees, something no ordinary person should have managed. So the father made him an offer. He asked Anakin to take his place one day and hold light and dark apart forever. Anakin refused, and that refusal would echo across the rest of the saga. Then the dagger came loose, and everything the father had built began to collapse. In the chaos that followed, the son turned the blade on the daughter and ended her life by mistake. As the living light faded from her, she gave what remained of herself through Anakin to revive Ahsoka, who had fallen. A green and white bird called Morai, said to be connected to the daughter, would follow Ahsoka for the rest of her life. With his daughter gone, and his son now beyond control, the father saw only one way out. He gave his own life with the dagger. The axe stripped the son of his power, long enough for Anakin to end him. Before they left, the father wiped the vision of the future from Anakin's mind, so the warning of what he would become was lost. With all 3 gone, the balance held, and Mortis itself faded away. The dagger ended the family of Mortis, but the offer they died holding open would find its answer in a Jedi who was already dead. Anakin Skywalker died in his son's arms, and his body burned on a funeral pyre. Years later, he stepped back into the story, walking a living Jedi through a battle he was never alive to see. He was the chosen one, the child born to bring balance to the Force, and he fulfilled that destiny by turning on his master and ending the reign of the dark side. After that, for a long time, he was simply a glowing spirit at the edge of the frame. In the canon series Ahsoka, he walks into the world between worlds, a realm that touches every moment in history at once. A place so dangerous that the Jedi who knew of it kept its very existence a secret. From inside it, a being can see and even reach into any point in time, a power no other place in the galaxy is known to offer. The most powerful Sith Lord who ever lived understood exactly what that meant. Palpatine spent years hunting the entrance, certain it would make him a god, and he was turned back before he ever set foot inside. The realm that the Emperor of the galaxy could not enter, Anakin walks freely. Ahsoka arrives there after falling in a duel, caught between living and dying, and it is Anakin who meets her. What he does next goes far past anything a normal spirit has shown. He walks her through her own past, including fighting she could not have shared with him. And as she relives those memories, she appears at different ages across her own life. He shifts freely between his fallen self and the Jedi he once was, the red blade flickering back to blue. He is not torn between the 2 halves of himself anymore. He holds both in perfect balance, fully whole. The father had once asked him to become the keeper of that stillness, and he had walked away. Here, beyond death, he embodies exactly what he was offered. The father had needed all 3 of them, 2 children and himself, to hold the light and the dark apart. Anakin holds both inside a single spirit, with no children, no dagger, and no Mortis to anchor him. He even gives Ahsoka the same kind of choice he was once given, to live or to die, and lets her make it herself, guiding the living the way the priestesses once guided Yoda. Anakin may have become what the father always needed, but the galaxy's true nightmare wore a face too, and it began as something heartbreakingly human. The father and his 2 children were never the whole family. They had a mother, and she became the most dangerous being the galaxy has ever known. In the Legends novel series Fate of the Jedi, her story comes to us secondhand, through the memory of an ancient hive mind that cannot always tell truth from myth. She began an ordinary mortal woman who found her way to that cosmic family and stayed, becoming the Mother, the one who kept the peace between the Light Child and the Dark One. For a while, there was balance, but she was mortal, and the others were not. Watching her family stay young while she grew old, she made a choice that would damn the entire galaxy. On that world sat two forbidden sources of power, a font that held raw strength and a pool that held deep knowledge. The Mother was warned never to touch them. Desperate to stay with her family forever, she drank from the font and bathed in the pool anyway, reaching for the immortality the others were born with. The power did make her deathless. It also unmade who she was. What rose in her place was a thing of pure chaos with tendrils for fingers and a mouth that stretched from ear to ear, and they named her Abeloth. The same family she loved became the first ones to cage her. She was sealed inside the Maw, that black hole prison built before the Republic itself, and there she stayed. Every time the balance of the Force was disturbed, she stirred and tried to break free, and each time she was forced back. That cycle held for a very long time, for one simple reason: the same cosmic family that came after the Architects was still strong enough to force her back. Then they died on Mortis. When her prison finally cracked open, the galaxy felt it before anyone understood why. It began as a sickness. Across the galaxy, young Jedi started losing their minds, gripped by a delusion that the people closest to them had been replaced by imposters, until they had to be sealed in carbonite for everyone's safety. Only later did the Jedi trace that madness back to a single source: stirring in the dark. When Abeloth came fully loose, she did not simply attack. She slipped into the minds of her enemies and wore their faces, even taking the shape of a woman Luke Skywalker had once loved, turning trusted allies into puppets without anyone noticing the switch. Worst of all, she could not be killed in any normal way. She could pour herself into many bodies at once, scattered across the galaxy, so that striking down one changed nothing, while the others lived on. Stopping her demanded an alliance almost no one could have predicted. Grandmaster Luke Skywalker hunted her across the galaxy, and in the end, he could not do it alone. He joined forces with an entire tribe of Sith, enemies sworn to destroy him because only Jedi and Sith together stood a chance. The hunt was a knot of betrayal on every side, and it cost lives all the way down. In the final reckoning, Luke faced her in a realm beyond the living world alongside a Dark Lord called Darth Krayt, while his son Ben and the other Jedi destroyed her remaining bodies at the same moment. The only way it could be done. Only when every piece of her fell at once did she finally die. Even then, Luke did not believe it was truly over. He sent his Jedi to find the one weapon that could end a god for certain, the dagger of Mortis, in case she ever returned. It took Jedi and Sith fighting side by side in two worlds at once to put out a single life. Yet every step of that hunt assumed an enemy who wanted something, and the four who came last wanted nothing at all. Four beings once stood in an empty field, arguing over which of them had invented time. To settle the argument, one of them reached out and turned Princess Leia's heart into a diamond, then forgot she had ever existed. In the Legends comic The Empire Strikes Back monthly, four beings stand beyond any scale yet seen. Called Telatni, Horus, Cole Dandasine, and Splendid App, they hold godlike power over form, matter, and time itself, and they treat all of reality as a toy to be played with. When Leia stumbles into their presence while fleeing enemy soldiers, the beings barely register her as alive. They're too busy bickering over who created shape, who created mass, who first thought of edges and moments and the flow of time. To them, a living person was not a life. It was just one more thing to experiment on. One of them claimed to have made all humans and grew annoyed at the criticism that they all looked the same. To prove the point, Horus turned Leia's heart to diamond, while Telatni crystallized one of the soldiers and fused two more into a single body, ending them as casually as a child rearranging blocks. There was no anger in it, and no cruelty in the way humans understand cruelty. There was only idle curiosity. These four come from one of the most obscure corners of the galaxy's oldest stories. Every other being answered to something. The gods of Mortis embodied the Force, yet a single blade could still end them. The Celestials needed machines the size of stations to move worlds. Abeloth, for all her chaos, still schemed and fought and could be cornered. These four answered to nothing at all. They reshaped reality itself with a thought, undoing life and death not as a plan or a conquest, but as idle play. Nothing in this galaxy comes close. Then they grew bored, and boredom was the only thing that saved her. Tired of their own game, the beings decided to leave and ordered one of their number to tidy up the mess. Splendid App restored Leia and the fallen soldiers to life, undoing the deaths as easily as they had been dealt. But this being did not fully grasp how time worked, and in putting the soldiers back, it flung them roughly 8,000 years into the past, where their remains were waiting at the very start of Leia's adventure. The deaths that opened her story and the beings who caused them turned out to be the same event, folded back on itself. With that, the Force simply vanished, leaving her unsure whether any of it had truly happened. They erased a life and restored it without a flicker of feeling, and never once saw her as anything more than a passing thought. No army, no matter, no cause. Just 4 bored gods, and a galaxy too small to notice them. But the mystery does not end with the beings who stood beyond the Force. The same title once carried by Abeloth, the Mother, may have returned around a new figure at the edge of the galaxy. Whether that connection is a warning, a coincidence, or the beginning of something even older is what could reshape everything still to come. So watch this video to find out.